You're listening to Empress Conversations podcast with your host, Maggie Peary. Conversations with Maggie. Join us next time on the next episode of Empress Conversations with Maggie. To learn more about guests or for more information on working with Maggie, go to www.empressconversationswithmaggie.com/get-started.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Empress Conversations with Maggie. Today, my guest is Rae Karim. Welcome, Rae.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Well, Rae, tell us about your business, Good Grief Now, and how you got started.
All right. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Totally appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell the world who I am and what I do. So I am Rae Karim, and I am a certified grief coach. And I am the CEO, founder of Good Grief Now, which is a 501c3 that I realized just officially celebrated 2 years. We've been in official business, if you could say that, for 2 years. And so Good Grief Now, like I said, is an Indianapolis-based 501c3 and is a national grief support organization. We offer grief coaching, both individual and group grief coaching. We cultivate safe, judgment-free space for grievers of any kind. We offer grief support training for organizations and churches, and we also offer community events and grief retreats.
Thank you for that. Yes. So the first thing I got to ask you is, how did you get started in being a grief coach? That's heavy.
Yeah, so the short of it is that my mama died. But to make to add more to it, to give that story more depth, May 29th of 2017, my grandfather, a 98-year-old veteran, died. He died on Memorial Day. And 16 days later, my mother, his daughter, died. And so we literally buried them 14 days apart. My grandfather's services were on June 10th. My mom's services were on June 24th. Now, remember, I said 2017, so this is definitely pre-COVID, and our family experienced great back-to-back losses. And so not only did I experience back-to-back losses, but there were people in my friend circles, in my close-knit community, and even the larger community that were experiencing grief as well. And there was a lack of support and a lack of community for them, for us to be able to talk about what we were grieving and to be able to name it. And while I have no issue with what I call the crying circles. Like, I have no issue with tears. Tears are very healthy. They're very cleansing. But I wanted to be able to kind of flip the script on grief a little bit and offer something else. And so Good Grief Now actually started as what I call a day party. It was a gathering during the daytime. We had a DJ. Shout out to DJ God's Illest. We had a DJ. We had food. We had information sessions, and then just kind of it wasn't necessarily games, but just ways for people to come together and talk about the activities. We had activities. And so that happened for about maybe 3 or 4 months. Of course, it was something that was very new. And I'll never forget when I told a friend of mine that I wanted to do it. And he said, Rae, he said, grief and party don't go together. I said, I know. That's why I'm doing it. And so I had a good amount of support. There were a good amount of people who showed up, who attended. But of course, it was something new. And because of the winter time and the fact that Indiana winters can get kind of crazy at times, then we had to put those things on hold. And I just never brought it back around. Then in 2019, of course, was the beginning of the panorama, i.e. the pandemic. 2019, end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And so I heard about a conference. I believe this was in 2020 or 2021 that I heard about a conference that my alma mater, Christian Theological Seminary, was hosting, and it was being hosted online. They had a grief celebrant who was going to be a speaker, and I hadn't ever heard of a grief celebrant before. I had heard of people officiating funerals, right? But I'm thinking to myself, what is a grief celebrant? And I don't go down rabbit holes. I go up information ladders. And so I kind of went up this ladder of information to figure out what a grief celebrant was, to find out that a grief celebrant is a person who tells stories about the person who has passed, going celebration. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So from there, I found out about grief coaching. From there, I found an amazing, incredible program called From Grief to Gratitude. For that, at the time, was facilitated by an incredible woman, Dora Carpenter, out of Washington, D.C. She and I had a beautiful and challenging, in a good way, if you will, intake session. And she was like, okay, Rae, you're in. And during that certification process, she would just say to me, Rae, I'm waiting on you to get out of the boat. I'm waiting on you to get out of the boat, Rae. I'm waiting. And I would just be like, Dora, what are you what are you talking? And so I got my grief coaching certification, and I have since stepped out of the boat. I had my first grief retreat 2 years ago, last month. I am now a 501c3. Good Grief Now is literally a national organization because I have offered and supported, offer grief coaching and supported churches and organizations in Philadelphia, in Colorado, in California, in Boston. And so I do this work, and it is really an honor to be able to do this work, to be able to take my own pain and partner it with promise so that other people can live in purpose.
Wow, Rae. Wow. Grief is not easy. I mean, I was just talking about it with a friend the other day because losing a loved one, we don't really get over it, right? We just kind of like deal with, the circumstances. It's
Yes.
such a life altering event.
Yes, it
Oh
is.
my goodness. So at what point, as you're going through your journey and you came out of the boat, as you said, to use your words, did you decide, I have to turn this into the business? And now you're reaching the masses. What was the biggest struggle for you professionally? Because yes, you had to do your own work and heal, but doing this type of work, you're like, I have to turn this into a business so that I can reach more people. What was the biggest challenge for you?
I think initially there were two challenges that I had. One of them was kind of, I think both of them were kind of both internal and external, if you will, like a matter of mind over matter, right? So the first challenge was mental, right? Was a thing that I had to get through, or was that I thought that therapy and therapists and counselors, like licensed mental health clinicians, would be my competition. And so I was thinking to myself, like, I'm not going to be able to get clients doing this because people already go to therapy, right? And I'm not a licensed mental health clinician. Now, I do have 2 degrees in psychology. I also have a degree in business administration, but I did not go far enough to be able to be a licensed mental health clinician because I was like, yeah, no, I'm not about to do that. But here we are, right? And so I initially looked at therapists, counselors as competition. But the interesting thing about it, Maggie, is that we are actually collaborators. Like, I have therapists who send their clients to me. I have therapists and counselors who refer their clients to me because I am a niche market. I think I'm saying that word correctly. So because I specifically work with grief, and because for a lot of therapists and counselors, theirs is more of a broad spectrum, then they'll send their clients to me. And it just completely, I'm completely amazed, right? Every time that happens, I'm like, okay, God, thanks for this. And then the other thing is that I was concerned that I was not going to get clients because who's talking about grief, right? but there are a lot more people who are talking about their grief. We don't talk about Bruno, but we gonna talk about this grief. That's my new hashtag. We don't talk about Bruno, but we gonna talk about this grief, because grief is not just about death. And so by me opening this, kind of opening the door for there to be an opportunity for people to talk about their grief, I talk to people who talk about grief of a loved one, grief of a breakup, whether that's a relationship breakup or a friendship breakup, grief of being an empty nester, grief of divorce, grief of finances, grief of health. Like, there's so much. And so people trust me to be able to walk alongside them. And I do not take that I will never, ever, ever take that for granted, that people trust me to walk alongside them in this space. It is something that, that really does bring my heart joy.
Mhm. Wow, well said, well said. One of the things that I ran across, Rae, as I was doing my snoops here, I saw you were a speaker at an event for a mother-daughter conference. Talk to us about that and like some of the stigma that goes with mother-daughter relationships.
So, ironically enough, this conference just took place a week ago tomorrow. It was just this past Saturday, called the Renew Her Conference.
Mhm.
Thanks to, there are plenty of partners that I know I could name for that, but two in particular as to the reason that I was there, is Inner Beauty and Centers of Wellness for Urban Women, which are both here in Indianapolis, Indiana. And so it was a beautiful, oh my gosh, it was such a beautiful beautiful time that we had, for these moms and their daughters. They were very, very transparent. I always commend the courage that it takes to be vulnerable and transparent in a space like that, especially in front of your mom or especially in front of your daughter. And so, one of the things that, I recognize that they experience, and when my mom was alive, that I know we experienced, was just the growing pains, if you will, right? Of recognizing that your daughter is not who you were, or who you thought she was going to be. For mothers recognizing that they may have made some mistakes along the way, or that they are trying their best and their daughters are still doing things that they would not do. And so it's just this dynamic of growth. I think one of the biggest spaces of grief, or the biggest facets of grief for mother-daughter relationships or familiar relationships that are that close, it's just a matter of the growing pains, right? Watching your daughter, have an experience that you can't do anything about, right? Watching your mom, be in relationship with somebody or struggle with finances or whatever that is, knowing that there isn't a whole lot you can do about it. That is a growing pain. That's an experience that you grow through, that you can't necessarily do anything about, even when it comes to expressing emotions. Because I find a lot of moms that I talk to are in a space of, I don't want to cry in front of my children. And I am very, very quick to caution mothers against that, because when you cry in front of your children, it gives them permission to express emotion as well. And so I think one of the healthiest things that any parent or caregiver can do is show emotion in front of your children. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you any less a mother, a father, or a caregiver. You are actually giving your child permission to express their emotions. You are letting them know that if mommy can do it, if daddy can do it, if parent, caregiver, can do it, then so can I.
Talk about it, Rae. Talk about it.
Yeah,
If
it's true.
it, so can I. And a lot of times, kids, even adults, we hold so much in. Then
Yeah.
the one little thing goes wrong, and you just explode from years of keeping things held inside. And a lot of that could be grief. Um,
Yes.
talk to us a little bit more about that, because grief counseling, whether it is in a group setting or a one-on-one coaching, how do you get your clients to work with you in those environments? Because it takes a certain level of trust, right, in order for
It
someone.
does.
And sometimes people are also vetting you. Are you going to be the coach that I trust to open up to? So there's that. once somebody feels comfortable with you, to finally get them to open up and talk about it. And maybe they only got 3 sessions with you before their insurance expired or whatever they can provide? Or how do you work with people?
So, there are a couple of facets to that. So, one is that thanks to a partnership that I have with Centers of Wellness for Urban Women, I am able to offer grief coaching for free. 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks of grief coaching for free, and so insurance is not needed. They don't have to have insurance to be able to work with me. And then I have another partnership with an organization called Mood Wealth, Mood WELLTH. And because of my partnership with them, I am also able to offer grief coaching to people who may have exhausted the 6 weeks and want to do something else, or who are not in Indianapolis or the surrounding, Marion County or surrounding counties. And that is at a lower cost than what it would be for, like a regular therapy session. And so the interesting thing about it, Maggie, is that a lot of my clients come as referrals. So a lot of my clients are sending people to me, and I think it's because I'm just relatable. I am not going to be stiff and staunch about this. Like, I'm not going to be, sitting up extra straight, like, hello, tell me about your grief. And now I am going to ask what brings you to the table, right? But I'm not going to do it in a way that is so restricted or restrictive, right? I'm going to let them know off the bat that this is a safe, judgment-free space, that the only way anybody would ever know anything that takes place in our sessions is if there is reason to believe that the client will them to themselves, anybody else, any pets, property, or possession. I let them know that right off the bat. And then I just I allow myself to be as relatable as possible, because that's why I do this work, right? I do this work because I have experience with grief, with all kinds of grief. Not just the fact that I'm an adult orphan, because both of my parents have passed, both sets of my grandparents have passed, right? Like, not just because of death, but because of other life experiences. And so for me, I just try to be relatable. I let them know that I'm going to laugh. And I'm not laughing at them, I'm laughing at me, right? I let them know that I have what I call squirrel moments. Because a friend of mine would say, Rae, you're just like a little squirrel. You're just like a little squirrel. Something could be going on and you're like, squirrel. And so if they say something and I just kind of get this spark of a spark of an idea, or it's a powerful statement that either one of us are made, I just pause and I say, I just want y'all to know I'm having a squirrel moment. And so I have to type that, I have to write that out or type it out, whatever that looks like. And so I just try my best to be relatable, right? And to be gracious.
That's
To
so
be
good.
gracious. Because grief is heavy, and a lot of people don't know how to talk about it. A lot of people don't know that they are grieving, but when they come to me, I just let them know, like, y'all, this is safe. This is safe space. I once heard, when I was working in corporate, a young lady came and talked to our organization, and she said, I don't use the term safe space because safe could be relative, right? She said, I use the term brave. I let people know that this is a brave space. And so I don't do it in that way, but I commend them for their courage to be vulnerable and transparent. So I do everything that I can to affirm, whether it's a one-on-one client, whether it's a workshop that I'm doing, whether it's a group of people, I do everything that I can to affirm them, to affirm their experience, to affirm their feelings. I let anybody know, whether it's coaching, whether group setting, whether it's a workshop, like, no matter where we are, if you find that you are in a space where you are about to be visibly grieving, right, where you want to cry, cry. You don't have to turn your camera off. You don't have to leave the room. You don't have to put your Zoom on mute. Like, that's what this space is for. Case in point. Thankfully, I also have the opportunity to be able to facilitate a grief support group at a local school here in Indianapolis called Thrival Indy Academy. And in one of the first sessions that we had when the school year began, one of the students was in tears. I mean, full-blown tears. And in my mind, I'm thinking, yes, like, this is grief release. Like, I live for these moments. And the student was about to walk out of the room, and I quickly went and like grabbed hold of them. And I said, no, you don't. That's what this space is for. Like you can cry right here. That's what this space is for. And so that student cried, and some other students began, and they just let it out. And I'm cheering, right? People are like, Rae, why are you cheering us? And I had somebody to tell me this, and he said it in love. He was about to cry. I said, great, like let the tears flow. He said, I hate you so much. And he said it in a silly way, right? Like he didn't mean it like that. I said, I know. I said, but I also know that you love me, because I am going to push that envelope. I want you to cry, right? I want you to scream. If you feel like you need to throw something, just let me know so I can duck and dodge and not get hit. You know what I mean? Like whatever you need to do to be able to release that grief, by all means, do it. Because if you don't, then you're going to find tension in your shoulders. You're going to find pains in your back. You're going to find like all of this kind of stuff, finding yourself going to the hospital and to the doctor. They running tests and drawing blood and telling you that there's nothing wrong, only because you need a good cry, right? You need to get on the highway, roll down the windows and scream to great capacity, right? Like whatever that looks like for you to be able to release that, so that it does not find its way housed in your body, or that it doesn't find its way releasing through being easily irritated or agitated, and nobody wants to talk to you and nobody wants to be around you, before you find yourself in a place of isolation that can be dangerous. Release the grief. Please, by all means, release the grief.
Rae, we cannot go any further without you telling our listening and watching audience how to find you. You've heard all this wonderful information. Share your website, your email, and your social media, please, so everybody.
Yes. So, my website, my website is www.raekarim.com. So it's www.raekarim.com. You can also find me on Instagram. I have a Good Grief Now Instagram page. I also have a Good Grief Now Facebook page. And then if you wanted to, you can also find me under Rae Karim under both Facebook and Instagram. And I have a Facebook support group called Grievers Welcome. Grievers Welcome. It's the Facebook support group, and there are 3 questions that you have to answer, and that gets you into the group.
And this could be anybody, perhaps even who had a loss over 10 years ago and probably has never had, closure is not the right word, but counseling, or, someone
Yes.
to talk.
Yes. I have clients now who are talking about losses that they experienced 5-10 years ago. And I also have people who talk about losses that they experienced as recent as last week, right? Like, so because there's no timeline for grief. There is no timeline for grief. As something that you said, like, we don't get over grief. We don't get over grief. We go through it. It is a process. It is a journey. It is an experience. And so it's not something that we get absolutely hate for people to say to other people, oh, shouldn't you be over that by now? Who you talking to? Because you can't be talking to me until you walk these shoes. And you probably didn't walk the shoes the proper way. Like, it's been 6 years since my mother passed, and I still walk around my house and shake my fist at God like, who was controlling the calendar? Because my mama's supposed to be here and she's not. And so I even say that to say, even though I am a grief coach who does the work with people, I also am doing the work for myself. So I am not above, having to do the work for myself, right? I still cry, right? I still have moments. I was on the phone with one of my really good friends the other day, and I found myself saying to her, like, this took something that we were talking about. I said, this happened before my mama died. And I just had to pause. I said, that is the stupidest thing in the world that I had to say that. Like, it's just dumb that I just had to say before my mama died. So I'm not doing this from a place of like, I am Rae Karim. You know what I mean? The grief coach who doesn't grieve. Nah, friend, we in this thing together, child. Listen, we are in this together.
Rae, you just threw so many nuggets, and it's like, oh my goodness, the visual that you just painted, saying, "I walk around your house," and you walk around your house shaking your fist at God, mad. My mom was supposed to be here, and just that visual. Someone is listening to this driving and thinking it is okay to actually shake your fist at God. I'm mad. You took her.
Yes.
Supposed to be a grandmother. She was supposed to be here. It's,
Yes.
and all of those emotions come out. So this is a great segue, because my next question to you is, as we approach the holiday season with Thanksgiving and Christmas around the corner,
Yes.
a lot of people may not have a family to be with during that time. They are a lot of people who choose to exit. A lot of things go down. So during the holiday seasons, it's not always positive. What would you say to someone going through during the holiday season?
One of the biggest things that I would say to someone experiencing grief or loss, no matter how new or quote unquote old it is,
Mhm.
there are two things that I would say. Give yourself permission to release your feelings and emotions in safe ways, right? Again, if that means that you need to cry, cry. If that means that you need to sit in your car and either keep the windows up or roll them down and scream, scream. If you need to go to one of those, it's not an escape room. Like, there are places in the country that are set up where you can like destroy things. The break room, you know what I'm talking about? Like, if you need to go to one of those places, go, okay? If do whatever you need to do in safe ways to be able to release your grief, right? The second thing that I would say is, do as much as you can help it. Don't be alone,
Mm.
right? And if you have to be alone, if you have to be alone, make sure that there are at least two people who know where you are and that you are okay every 12 to 24 hours. Because
Oh,
I recognize that some people need to come off the grid, right? Like, some people need to just take some time, like, hey, I just need to. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, because we all need that space where we just need to be by ourselves.
yes.
But when you are in a space of what I'll call active grief, and it may not be active until the day of, you can find yourself in a space of isolation, and it feels like the walls are closing in, right? So your thoughts and your emotions and feelings are everywhere, and if you stay in that place for too long, it just becomes dangerous. It becomes dangerous because then you feel like the world is against you, and like, there was something that you did or something that you said or something you didn't do or didn't say. You just kind of find fault in everything, and it just becomes a dark, dangerous place. And so I always encourage people that if you have to be by yourself, let at least two people know where you are and that you are okay. I would say every 12 to 24 hours. If that needs to be every 6 to 12 hours, like whatever that looks like, and that you should not be in that space for more than 3 days.
That's so
Um
good
yeah.
advice. What other tips would you give? Because you just said, you wrapped it up by saying you should not be in that space for more than 3 days. So if it's not you or someone that you're concerned about, what advice would you give if there's a friend, an associate, or someone that you may be concerned and are getting feelings that they may be harming themselves or something, not necessarily positive?
I'm pulling up. I listen. There is a group. I facilitated a community grief support group. We just celebrated a year in August, and we have a group chat. And one of the people in the group, we hadn't heard from him in about 2 weeks, and I could not find their address. And she finally reached out and was just like, Rae, I'm sorry, I just kind of been in the space. I said, you can't do that. Because if I had found that address, huh, pulling up. Now, of course, and it's only because we have a bond, right? So we can do that. I can't do that with everybody.
Absolutely.
But I would definitely find out who is closest to them to be able to say, hey, check on that person. Because one of the things with the work that I do, before we even begin, there's an intake process. There's an intake form that they have to complete, which has some sort of contact information on it. So then if I can't reach you, I'm trying to find out who knows you, and I'm sending somebody to pull up. Like, not on my watch, right? As much as I can help it. And I don't say that to say like I'm like this cape wearing almighty person. I don't say it in that way. I just recognize that there are times that our emotions and our feelings can get the best of us. And if you can just sometimes imagine wrestling. Think about a wrestling match, right? And the person is like pinned down, you know what I mean? Or like they are up against the ropes or what have you. And they just need to be able to tag that person. If they can just touch that person's finger to let them know they want them in the ring to come help them get this opponent off of them. Like, if all you need is just that one person, that text to say, hey, right? That finger to touch, right? Like that knock on the door, like that bird chirping, whatever it is, to just kind of help break you out of that place. If I can be the person to help facilitate that or initiate that, I'm going to do it, because life is supposed to be lived. We were not created to simply exist. Life is to be lived. And one of the things I have been telling my clients as of late is that we cannot allow grief to overcome our lives, especially if they are experiencing grief because of a death. We cannot allow somebody else's death to overshadow our lives. We cannot allow loss to overcome or overshadow our lives. We are supposed to live life, not merely exist. That's so right. Simply answer the question. I'm going to try to get in touch with somebody who knows that person to make sure that they are okay.
Wow. Rae, I know you're based in Indiana. So what are your plans? Because I do know you're accessible throughout the nation. Will we be seeing you in Atlanta sometime soon?
I mean, sure. Just tell me when.
Okay, very good. Very good. What are the plans for Good Grief now because you are still new, you're still starting. What are your plans within the next 5 years? Where do you see Good Grief now heading to?
In the next 5 years, that's such a beautiful question. I really appreciate that you asked me. In the next 5 years, I see Good Grief now having certified our own grief coaches. So a grief certification program. 5 years. I would love to be able to certify, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 people a year or more, right? To be able to host 2 to 4 grief retreats every year. And then to be able to also have just kind of some other community events to be able to intersect grief in some spaces. So definitely an intersection of grief and faith, an intersection of grief and community. To be able to, I have a couple of books that I would like to write. So I want to turn the table on grief. I want to turn grief on its head ultimately, so that it's not a situation where people feel like they can't talk about it. I want grief to be coffee table conversation, brunch conversation, latte conversation, whatever we drinking and talking about, mimosa conversation, whatever it looks like, because we talk about everything else, right? Mm-hmm. There was a monkey on the loose here a couple of days ago, okay? His name is Momo. In real life, it was a monkey loose on the Far East Side. People talked about Momo the monkey, all right? We talk about, you know what I mean, hey, we talk about sneakers. We talk about being expats. We talk about traveling. We talk about who get married, who got divorced. But we don't talk about grief, and we don't talk about the fact that some of those things that we are talking about have to do with grief. We're not always ready for those conversations, but I'm ready to have them. And I just want to create spaces. I will. Good Grief now is creating spaces for people to safely, bravely talk about grief.
manifest it. I love it. Speak it into existence. That's right, Rae. That is wonderful. But well, now you have us all on the edge. What happened to Momo the monkey? Because you can't just close out and leave us like this. What happened to Momo?
So Momo was captured and returned to his owner. I found out, my sister was telling me that Momo like bit 4 people and kind of scratched up some doors. We don't know how he got out. And when I first saw it on Facebook, I was like, this is a joke. No, there was really a 5-foot monkey named Momo who got loose, and he has been captured and he has been reunited with his rightful owner. And hopefully Momo don't do that no more, because
Momo was a whole person walking around 5 foot. That's a huge monkey.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, I digressed. I got caught up in monkey and Momo's world. But just to, as we get ready to close here, just to kind of wrap it up, you know, in polite society, grief is not necessarily something we talk about as casually. And I love that you're creating those spaces to kind of bring it up during brunch. But then, you know, you can't imagine a table full of lovely divas all dressed up to the nines and, you know, wiping their lashes away and, you know, trying to keep it all together. But just being raw and real with someone, it is such a powerful release on your soul and your physical well-being. It curbs a lot of sickness out of your body. And you explained just, you know, how it can hold on to your body. But any other closing remarks as we get ready to wrap up, Rae, and you can tell us more about your company and what you do and yourself?
I just want y'all to, I one of the last things that I want to say is that if you hear it from no one else, I, Rae Karim, founder of Good Grief Now, am giving you permission to grieve. I am giving you permission to grieve. I am giving you permission to feel what you need to feel. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. I am giving you permission to cry. I am giving you permission to scream. I am giving you permission to shake your fist at God. Yes, you can question God. We know grandmama and them told us that you wasn't supposed to, but that's not even biblical. All right. They was doing the best that they could, but it's not even biblical. I'm not saying they wrong, but still, right? Like, I am giving you permission to grieve.
Wherever you are.
Wherever you are, I am giving you permission. However many times you listen to this, I am giving you permission to grieve.
Rae Kim, thank you.
You are welcome.
You're listening to Empress Conversations podcast with your host, Maggie Peary. Conversations with Maggie. Yeah, yeah. Join us next time on the next episode of Empress Conversations with Maggie. To learn more about guests or for more information on working with Maggie, go to www.empressconversationswithmaggie.com/get-started.